And hip hop, one might argue, was sort of the music of, young people, adolescents, teenagers that are also dealing with the crack era. When I lecture about the drug epidemic in Reagan's America, I'm lecturing from a historical perspective, I'm lecturing from a sociological perspective, but I'm also lecturing from a personal perspective. And it's a perspective of paradox. Nothing captured that paradox more than when my mother returned from visiting me in Philadelphia. I was attending Temple University during the 1990s. And my mama grew up in that house, 1622 West 28th Street. She was born in 1951. And for the first time in her lifetime in the 1990s, her house was broken into. And I remember my mother crying, not because of, the house is broken into and she lost things, but because the person who broke into the house was a childhood friend who was caught up in her crack addiction, caught up in her drug addiction. And the thing that I remember most about my mom is just the compassion with which she sort of dealt with this. And so when I'm talking about Reagan America, when I'm talking about, the crack epidemic, for me, it's always sort of personal. It's also a part of sort of my political becoming and my politicization. It wasn't lost on me in 1986 and then in 1988 when Reagan pushed and then Congress signed the anti-drug abuse bills, that the amount of time that you received for crack distribution was a lot greater than the time that you received in the penalty for kind of powdered cocaine addiction. So for a lot of folks, the story of crack cocaine is connected to our entry into activism. It's connected to our entry into thinking about, the criminal justice system. And so for me, when I'm sharing with you all the story of crack cocaine, it's important to hit all of those aspects of it. The sociological aspect of crack cocaine and its connection to the so-called underclass that William Julius Wilson talks about in his book, The Truly Disadvantaged, or The Declining Significance of Race, when he makes this argument that there is this idea that there has emerged in post-industrial America this black underclass, which means they're suffering from chronic underemployment or unemployment, teenage pregnancy, declining civic institutions, fractured family life. But they're also dealing with this crack epidemic. That's a part of the story. And then there's a cultural element of the story. These folks who are emerging from these communities, these ravaged communities, and various art forms, whether it be gospel or hip hop, is a way that they communicate what they're going through, but they also provide some kind of critique of the system. And then there's this larger political story, this political story of thinking about crack cocaine as not just something that problematic people do, but as also a symptom of what it means to be a people with problems. How do people respond to economic and material deprivation? So I would make the argument that as folks are navigating the 1980s, dealing with Reagan America, dealing with declining economic opportunities, dealing with the fact that, yes, there's wealth and there's abundance in the Sun Belt, and in LA and in these new industries, but in the Rust Belt, there's not a lot of opportunities. And so the drug game, crack cocaine becomes a way for people to survive economically. But I want to make the argument when we think about the user, crack cocaine is also a way for people to deal with the existential crises that also accompany this post-industrial moment. The 1980s is a decade of paradox, and the story of Reagan and deindustrialization and crack cocaine is an important part of this story. There's a lot to cover, and we're running out of time, but we're going to pick back up on this story on Thursday. So I'll see you all on Thursday. Make sure you do your readings. Make sure you read William Julius Wilson, The Declining Significance of Race. I also want you to check out Adolph Reed. All right, I'll see you all on Thursday.